Hey, what's up? What's up? As you guys know, yesterday was breaking news with this whole Diddy and Cassie situation, and the internet has been in shambles. There was reports that he had done all of these allegations to her, and then there was this report that was leaked to TMZ that said that he was under criminal investigation, and then now today they're saying that the employee who said that wasn't telling the truth. And then so people are starting to allude that police are paid off, and there's all of these different stories that have been going on surrounding this. There are people talking about the whole Kid Cudi and Diddy situation about the car exploding. There are also people bringing up old tweets from 2012. Now there was a tweet where it was just a random Twitter user who had posted to their Twitter back in 2012 saying that they were witnessing Diddy and Kid Cudi fight in the club. So there has been a lot of stuff going on social media. And today I have a big lawyer from NYC who is going to come on our platform. His name is Dimitri. I don't want to mess up his last name, so I'm going to let him say it for y'all. But we have an attorney here today with us, and he is going to answer any questions that we have about the case. So if you have a question, I want you to put a Q in the beginning of it so that we know it's a question that I can highlight for him to answer. And he is going to try and answer any of our questions that we have about the case. So let me bring him on up right now. So welcome. Thank you for coming on. We have Dimitri, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and say his full name because I don't want to butcher it. Okay.
Good afternoon, folks. I appreciate you for having me on. Thank you so much. My name is Dmitry Shaknovich. That's how you pronounce my last name. It's not easy, though. If you look at it and you get rid of the H in the middle, it becomes a little easier. I'm a lawyer in New York. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, a civil litigation lawyer. I'm also a professor in New York, and I run a YouTube channel that helps folks with the law and things of that nature, and that's youtube.com/DShackLaw, at DShackLaw. And if you folks like this kind of stuff, please feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, I'm here to answer all your questions as best I can, and I'm ready to go.
All right. So the first question comes from Grace. She says, can this open the floodgates to other lawsuits in other states, possibly other countries?
So other countries, it's tough for me to answer. I'm not licensed in any other countries. I'm not licensed anywhere but New York and New Jersey, really. But the answer is yes, right? The answer is that if and when a lawsuit is filed and then proceeds through the court system, right, all the way up to trial, it's possible that in that lawsuit, the plaintiff may be able to use evidence of other misconduct, right, prior bad acts, as they call them. There's a whole complex body of law as to what can come into a separate case, right? But generally speaking, if there's some sort of pattern that can be shown, some sort of common scheme, then yes, something like this may hurt him later on if other cases are filed, criminal or civil, elsewhere around the country.
All right. So Ashley sends in a question, and she says, is she going to press charges? I don't think that the lawyer would know that, but you can answer, I guess.
Well, so pressing charges is a funny thing, right? So in the United States, the victim of a crime can't really decide to press charges. They can make a complaint, right? They can try to push police. They can try to push prosecutors to prosecute, but they can't really press charges. Now, if she wants to pursue a criminal case, she would have to go to the authorities, and if the authorities find her complaints credible, reliable, they can pursue a criminal case depending on the facts, right? So the fact that there has been no criminal case here yet can mean so many different things. It can mean that she hasn't gone to police. It can mean that she has gone and then decided to withdraw. It can mean that she has gone and they didn't think that her case was strong enough. It can mean a million different things. And by the way, it can still happen, right? Only because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that criminal charges can't be brought in the future. But pressing charges is a lot harder than filing a civil lawsuit. Anybody can file a civil lawsuit for anything, really, right? All you need is a filing fee. And if you hire a lawyer, that lawyer has to make sure that what he's doing isn't frivolous. Otherwise, he can get in trouble. But all you have to do is file something, prepare a document, and file it. Criminal cases are harder. You really have to convince prosecutors and police officers, experts, right, to believe you and pursue a case.
All right. Thank you so much. Because I think there was a lot of people who had questions as it pertains to this. And a lot of people said, well, why not go to the police first? And I think you just answered that. So thank you so much. Because a lot of people were wondering why
That's
people
a great
go
question
civilly before they go criminal. All right.
That's
So another person says, are there criminal charges in New York? There was a post saying it was not true.
I'm not aware of any criminal charges. From what I understand, he hasn't surrendered to police. He hasn't been to court. So my understanding is there have not been criminal charges filed against him. The extent to which there's a criminal investigation, very few people would know. Only the police, maybe the victim, and him and his lawyer, really. So it's possible that an investigation is taking place. But other than that, very hard to know anything, really.
All right. So next question, someone says, artists who sign NDAs, can they also bring forth allegations now?
Yeah, this NDA thing is misunderstood by people. An NDA is a contract, right? If you breach a contract, then the person that is the suffering party can sue you for breach of contract, right? They cannot stop you from going to police, right? That's called extortion. It's illegal, right? You can't have effectively a contract that binds one party to stay away from the cops and the courts. That's not allowed. So NDAs, look, somebody can breach an NDA and then be sued for damages, sure. But the NDA in and of itself is just a contract. It doesn't stop somebody from pressing charges or going to the police or otherwise.
Okay. And before I go on to any other questions, we're going to go through as many as possible. But if you could just give your thoughts on the case so far and what you've seen from your end, and then we'll have some more questions.
Well, you know, what's important to remember right now is that it is a civil case, right? Civil cases are so different from criminal cases. There are a lot of people writing that he's going to go to jail, he's going to, suffer all these other things. You never know. That could still happen. But it's important not to jump to those kinds of conclusions just yet. He's being sued for money in a civil case in federal court here in New York. That process takes many, many months, sometimes years. That process involves something called discovery, which is the production of documents and evidence, right? It requires depositions where more information comes out. There's a real deep vetting process as to how these cases play out. They take a long time, and the evidence will only come out as time passes. Right now, there's a complaint filed. The complaint contains allegations. It doesn't contain evidence. It's important to keep that in mind and separate those two, make that distinction between a criminal case and a civil case and where we are in the process.
Okay. All right. So another person, I think you kind of answered this with the last question, but somebody says NDAs don't protect things like what Diddy has been accused of, right?
Right. The short answer is yes, right? And an NDA is a contract. And if you breach the contract, if there's an NDA, for example, I'm just hypothesizing here, saying that you can't come forward with certain information in exchange for $20 million, and then the person that has the information breaches the contract, that person may have to give back the money, or there may be more damages, but that's in contract. Can't stop somebody from going to the police in a contract.
All right. Has the statute of limitations ran out?
So that's the big thing in the case, right? That's the big thing in the case. So after the Me Too movement, many places, New York being one of them, enacted a new law that basically gave survivors of sexual assault, right, who came forth and said, this Me Too movement is great, but something happened to me decades ago, and now I'm kind of out of luck. And so there's a new law that was put in place that says that up until a certain period of time, we'll extend that statute of limitations. We'll allow people that have suffered abuse in the past to bring these kinds of lawsuits. And when you hear lawsuits these days, whether it's, I believe, the one against Trump, and there are others that are brought in court from decades ago, it's typically relying on this new law. So the statute of limitations is a question here. It's relying on this new law in New York.
All right. I think this is has the statute of limitations for any of these allegations expired that would prohibit criminal charges? And I think, does that fall under what you just said?
So there are civil statutes of limitations and criminal statutes of limitations. Criminal statutes of limitations, generally speaking, become longer as the crime becomes more severe, right? So in New York, if you have a very severe crime, you're talking your murders, your kidnappings, your rapes, your arsons, those have decades long statutes of limitations. So it's very hard to avoid one of these cases on that ground.
All right. Next question. Does the statute of limitations for SA vary by state to state?
The answer is yes. And there's I think, a bit of a follow-up question there. In New York, they did enact this Adult Survivors Act, right, which allows the statute of limitations to be extended up until a certain period of time. So that is one of the consequences of the Me Too movement as far as legislation is concerned.
Okay. And they wanted to know what exactly does NDAs protect? Like, what do they protect?
Sure. So an NDA is a contract. Again, right? An NDA is an agreement between two parties to do something. That's all, right? You keep your mouth shut, I give you money. That's basically what an NDA is. You cannot contract to prevent somebody to report a crime. That's not allowed, right? You can't contract with somebody to not testify in a criminal case. That's also not allowed. So the way a contract works is you can contract for anything other than certain things, right? And one of, preventing somebody from participating in a criminal case is one of those things.
Okay. All right. I also dropped the link if there's anybody who wants to come on instead of just like reading out the questions. I dropped the link for that as well. He has like 30 more minutes or so. So I'm trying to get through as much as possible. It says, would a high profile attorney like Cassie's even take on a case like this if he thought there was a possibility of losing?
Well, that's a tough question because I would have to get in the head of her lawyer, which is hard to do. The possibilities of her losing are always there, right? You can't take on a case and guarantee something. That would never happen. Maybe her lawyer is relying on the fact that he actually does have a strong case. Who knows? Maybe he's relying on a settlement at some point down the line. Typically, these cases are taken on a percentage, right? And so it's possible that's the case. We'll never know what's in the lawyer's head. The only thing we do know, or the only thing that we can presume, is that the lawyer thought or thinks he has a good faith basis to file this case, right? Lawyers can't do anything else. Otherwise, they would be in violation of the rules. So he certainly has a good faith basis in filing this case, he believes.
All right. Next question. Ashley says, what will happen to her lawsuit if they have to prove that she tried to blackmail him?
That's a terrific question. So blackmail is a crime, right? Whether or not she will be prosecuted for that crime is a tough question because there's generally a policy against prosecuting victims of sexual assault, right? Because they don't want people to be dissuaded from reporting. Now, assuming she's not arrested for extortion, right? She'll have to at some point provide testimony in this case. And if there is blackmail here that a lawyer can make out as a defense, then that lawyer will cross-examine her on that, right? And that lawyer will say things that lawyers say in all these kinds of cases. Isn't it true that the only reason you're doing this is because of money? And isn't it true that you tried to squeeze money out of this guy prior to a trial? And isn't it true? Things like that. So it'll hurt her credibility if, in fact, there's good evidence of that.
All right. So another person says, can this go to court and she get a higher amount than, I guess, what she's requesting?
Well, it's already in court, right? She filed a lawsuit, so it's in court. In terms of a higher amount, that's a tough legal question. Generally, when you demand a certain amount of damages in a lawsuit, you can't exceed that amount, right? But it depends on how the case turns out. You could always amend the lawsuit, add new things, So right now, I would say no, but that's an entirely kind of premature answer.
All right. Another person says, in a case such as this, what may be a possible defense Diddy may try and / can plead?
Oh, so again, this is the kind of thing I talked about on my YouTube channel yesterday. It's tough to know. Only his lawyer knows, and even then, right? You only provide a defense when you know the offense, and they don't know the offense yet. They know the allegations, but they don't know the evidence. They don't know what will come out in discovery. They don't know what photographic evidence there is, what video evidence there is, what statements were made, what medical records there are. Right, in a case like this, that's a big deal. So all of those things have to come out.
Okay. And speaking about medical records and all of those things like that, she made the allegation that he was forwarding her doctor's info to him and had control over it and things like that. Normally in cases like this, when I see lawsuits filed, sometimes there's like exhibits. Are they purposely like not putting any exhibits as a strategy, you think, or is this typically how it is, just the allegation and then the exhibits come later in court?
Some lawsuits have exhibits attached to them. You don't have to attach them. And a lot of lawyers take the position that it's better not to attach them, because then you give the other side information that you don't have to give them before you have to give it to them, right? And there's no reason to do that. Now, if you're talking about medical records in specific, medical records are typically protected, right? So they wouldn't be in the public forum, even if they were somehow attached to this lawsuit.
Okay. Also, guys, it's if you guys want to put a question, you have to put Q in front and then your question. Also, I would like if some of you guys can come up on the panel as well, so that it's not just us reading, is more of an interaction that way as well. But let's see if there are any other questions. Is it possible Cassie has some sort of video evidence? She has good lawyers, so I believe she has something.
Of course, it's possible. Whether or not she has it is an entirely different question. Certainly, it's possible. And it really depends on the allegations, right? The allegations really entail, from what I understand, a long pattern of misconduct and abuse, right? A pattern that the defendant addicted this person to drugs and, allowed her to become addicted to alcohol. And it's a long pattern. So it's not like this is, an assault case out of a fight on the street where you have a video somewhere and that's that. It's possible there are videos here, but the allegations are years long in nature. You're not going to tape everything, right?
Right. All right. So another person had a question, and it was something along the lines of, can you use a civil case to catch someone in a criminal case? And I think that was a lot of people's comments under my other video. They were saying, like, if she wins this case, that helps the criminal case. Is that true?
That's actually a great question. Again, something I discuss on my YouTube channel is that distinction between criminal and civil. It's so important, right? Here's the way that it works. In a civil case, right, there are depositions, which means that at some point, Diddy or the plaintiff, both really, will have to sit down and testify as to what happened, right? If there are criminal consequences to this conduct, if his lawyers believe that what he says may hurt him criminally, he has the option of invoking the Fifth Amendment, right, and not testifying, because we have that privilege against self-incrimination here. So if they get testimony out of him and evidence out of him, certainly that could be used in any criminal case. The question is whether or not, as this case moves on, will his lawyers think that a criminal case is big enough of a threat to protect him from testifying? Because if they do that, if they tell him, look, you can't testify in this case, because if you do, and then you're charged with a crime, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot, right? You bind yourself to a story. That could be used against him in the civil case, right? Silence can be used against you in a civil case. It can't be used against you in a criminal case. In a civil case, it can be used against you. So the answer is, what happens in the civil case can hurt in the criminal case. But it's difficult to say to what degree it will at this point.
All right, next question. Someone says, these are some horrible allegations. If you were Diddy's attorney, would you advise him to settle or take it to trial?
Yeah, I mean, you really need to know the evidence to know that. And you need to know the evidence very deeply. And nobody knows the evidence really deeply yet, including the lawyers, because evidence hasn't been disclosed yet. Um, it's tough because it's not really a legal question only. It's more of a public relations question, right? And that's something that public relations people deal with and not me. Typically in a case like this, you always want to settle, but you don't want to settle in such a way that invites criticism, right? And so that's really the question. It depends on how strong his case is and how strong his defense is. If he feels that he's going to win this case no matter what, that will be a motivator to go to trial. He's not limited by money, right? A lot of people are. That's why they can't go to trial. He doesn't have that problem. So it's possible he'll go to trial here.
Okay. It seems like y'all are scared to come up on the panel. I don't know what y'all scared of. It's like 1,200 of you guys watching right now, and I know that y'all could come on up. But all right, so let's get some more questions. Let's see. Um, if Diddy offers her 8-figure settlement, how do they claim blackmail now?
If he that's a strange. So if they wanted, before they filed this lawsuit, they wanted money in exchange for not filing the lawsuit, and he engages that conversation, that doesn't mean that they're not extorting him, right? That just means he may want to settle the case. So it depends on what happened there.
All right. We're gonna take up Star on the panel. Star, what's your question?
Hi, I think he actually just answered it, but I was going to ask, it has been alleged that Cassie tried to blackmail him, before making this public. Does that hurt her chances of winning if that is in fact true? And you may have answered this already.
That's okay. I can answer it again. It's possible that it does, because on cross-examination, his lawyer will ask her those questions, right? Aren't you only doing this for money? And didn't you try to steal money effectively prior to litigating this case? And so that may hurt her testimony. But to the extent that it's a settlement discussion, that may not be admissible in the case. So a lot of legal questions to be answered.
Will it? I guess the only ways to find that out would be, I'm assuming, like via text messages, or like what kind of evidence could be presented to, like, I guess make it be true. Like, I'm just trying to understand, how could they bring forth the evidence unless it's text message or recorded phone call or something of that nature?
Something that verbally says, I'm gonna sue you if you don't give, like, if they have something like that, then I think that's kind of.
Yeah,
it depends on what you look. There's a press release out there from his publicist saying there was extortion attempts. It depends on what that really means, right? If she sent him a text message saying, pay me money or I'll sue you, that's one thing. If she hired a lawyer who then made a settlement demand, that's a little bit different. So again, it'll depend on how and what happened here. The devil's in the details.
okay. And then I just have one last question, if you guys don't mind. As it relates to, like for instance, her stylist came out and said that he witnessed, some of this abuse. Some people are saying, like, well, these people may not come forward out of fear of retaliation. I've been told that there's a such thing as a witness being able to, like, pretty much detail the events in an affidavit and not, like, show for court. Is that true? I could be using the terminology wrong, but just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. So, like, can victims testify, I guess, to what they've seen without physically coming to court? Like, can they write it out or whatever, or record it and it still be used in the case?
Generally, no.
Okay.
That's the best way you can answer it. There are a whole bunch of issues that could deal with witnesses. If they're dying, for example, they don't have health, they have health concerns, right? So they can't come to court. Generally, you can't not come to court if you want to provide testimony.
Okay, well, thank you. Those were the only questions I had.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Star. All right. CB says, will Cassie win in the court of public opinion, and what damages will the case have on Diddy's reputation? I'm gonna answer that. I think that there is always a balancing scale based on what information is presented at the time. Right now, it looks like she's winning in the court of public opinion because most people automatically are believing her. Now, if Diddy has some bombshell that he drops, it can tip the balancing scale. And things can change in that manner. Like right now, the scale is one way. And then if we get evidence, it can kind of, teeter totter like that. Maybe he has something that can redeem his reputation. But right now, people are automatically believing what is being said. Let's go to Brandy.
Hi, Meek.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I just had a quick question. How do they decide what states do they bring the charges, I guess, or the case in? I don't know if you understand my question, because I guess I'm confused on how there's a case in like New York, and then like I guess how do courts decide that?
What you're talking about is something called jurisdiction. There are a whole bunch of laws in place about where you could bring a lawsuit. Typically, when it comes to something like this, the lawsuit is brought in the state in which the conduct arose, right? That's the short answer. And there's a whole body of case law about what that actually means. And it's particularly complicated when you have a pattern of abuse here, right? Because if you have a pattern of abuse, that could have happened around different states. Generally, it's the state where the conduct arose. And importantly, the plaintiff is the party who picks where the party sues, right? And if the defendant wants to move the lawsuit, then that can happen only if there's a good reason for it.
Right. And so I'll add on to that. So, like he said, generally, that's kind of like how it goes. In this case, specifically, she talked about it in the lawsuit that she was employed under his LLC, which was under New York. So a large amount of what she was suing was based on him being her boss and her being his employee. And his company was based out of New York City. And a lot of the stuff did happen in New York, but they did at one point move to California. But she still was his artist, his employer. She was employed by him under his New York company.
Okay, thank you. And I just had another quick question. So, if it's primarily that she was a employee under the New York company, if there are criminal charges that come about, will it be like New York law that's applied to it, or how does that work?
Yeah, again, it depends on where the case is brought, right?
Okay.
If the case is brought in New York, then yes, it'll be New York law.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Sure.
All right. And then Thomas B says, did he break down the Adult Survivors Act? And he did.
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about earlier, right? The Adult Survivors Act is the law that extends the statute of limitations. So that's the law under which they're suing. It's a procedural issue, not so much a substantive one. But that's what they're doing to come into court now.
All right. Sheikah.
Hey, Nick. Long time.
Hey.
So, okay, my question is more so where it pertains to how much of it was just a part of the goings about of the relationship. As we know, there are plenty of women out here that'll basically do anything for, a man of high standing with a lot of money. They'll go along to get along for however long. She actually left Diddy for the trainer, and there was no real feedback. He cried, he was very emotional. This was during the time Kim Porter passed. So how much is she going to have to actually prove that this wasn't just a normal part of their relationship, and as far as it actually being something that they can say was criminal or abuse?
Look, in every domestic violence case, and this is a domestic violence case, it's just one on a very public scale. In every domestic violence case, they have these dynamics, right? There's some intimate relationship that at some point became abusive. And experts, including lawyers, that's why prosecutors' offices have whole bureaus devoted to domestic violence, is that there are experts that are able to figure out, parse out when the intimate relationship became abusive. And this will be no different. It's just going to be in the news a lot. That's all, right? Domestic violence cases are tough for that reason, right? Because you have a relationship that at some point presumably wasn't abusive and became abusive with time. And so you're going to have to parse out those details. And it's going to be very hard, right, to go in front of a jury and prove that under certain circumstances. And so this is no different from a domestic violence case that is typical in New York and elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm thinking
before you
more
ask
so
your
in
question,
regards
you have
to
another question. Just wait 1 second. Dimitri has a YouTube channel. It's a lot more of you who just came on. So I want to make sure that we are also going over there to follow him as well, because he breaks down cases like this and he speaks out very eloquently. So we want to show him love over on his YouTube channel. So I'm gonna let him shout out his YouTube channel one more time, and then we're gonna go on.
Oh, thank you. It's youtube.com/@dshacklaw, DSHAK law.com, I guess. youtube.com/@dshacklaw.
Okay. All right. Shika, did you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback because I was speaking more in regards to the rape allegations and the having sex with the multiple different men and things of that nature. As we know, we have Miami, his current partner, who is very open about this. So, she's down for whatever, whatever is good with the game, whatever's good with the goose is good with the gander. Like, you understand? So how is it that they're going to differentiate that wasn't just a normal part of their sex life? I mean, we are all aware that the Hollywood, and I quote unquote that, environment, they have all kinds of sex parties and things of that nature. So how can we differentiate that she just wasn't, a part of the, going along?
No, that's again, great question, right? The issue in these cases is consent. That's why these cases are so hard to win, right? Because consent is a difficult question. So at what point did this relationship, which is exactly what you're asking, right? You're asking, how do we figure out when a consensual relationship became non-consensual?
Right.
And that's very hard. I mean, that is very hard. That's why sexual abuse cases are so difficult. That's why rape cases are so difficult. Consent is a question that you can't even fix with DNA, right? I mean, it's an incredibly difficult question, and it will require testimony. And if this goes to trial, then like most domestic violence cases, this will be a credibility case. It will be the jury determining who is more believable, which sounds inhumane in a case like this, right? Because you're dealing with such sensitive stuff. But that's the only way to answer it. And of course, if you have other evidence like videos and photos and other things, that'll help the credibility of whoever those pieces of evidence support. But it will be a credibility question.
All right.
Okay, great. Thanks. That was all my questions. Thank you.
All right, Ebony. Ebony, unmute your mic. Are you there, Ebony? Okay, maybe click off and come back on. His YouTube channel is on the screen. If you guys definitely want to go to it and subscribe. We have about a few more minutes, so let me see if there's anybody else who wants to hop on real quick, because he is a busy man. Okay.
I have some time. Don't worry. I have a little bit of time.
Okay, cool. All right, I just like to respect people's time and try to be on time. All right, so I'm going to drop that. Let me see if there is any questions that I missed. Let's see. Remember, always put Q in the beginning so I know that it's a question to the attorney. If there is a warrant granted for evidence in his house or business based on knowledge of videotapes, if they found evidence leaking to a criminal case, how would that go?
Another great question. A lot of great questions here. A lot of great questions. If there's a warrant, right, which basically is a court order by a judge saying, hey, government, you can go and search somebody's stuff, it'll depend on what's in the warrant. Warrants have to be detailed, right? There has to be provisions in the warrant that dictate what they can search. And the execution of the warrant must be reasonable in consideration of what they can search. You understand? So they can't come into somebody's house and kind of just throw it upside down and look for anything, right? If there's certain evidence they're looking for, they present that to the judge. The judge decides whether or not there's sufficient reason to go and search for that evidence. And then when they execute the warrant, they can only look in places where that evidence would reasonably exist. And so that's the answer. Videotapes is, is tough because they can exist on computers, right? They can exist physically, I suppose, these days still. That's why you have a lot of cases where the government comes in and takes everybody's laptops and iPads, right? Because these days, evidence can exist in a million different forms.
All right, we have another question, but before we go to that question, Nahesa backstage, it says your device is not connected. So click off and come back on and connect your device. And to the people who are watching, we have 1,400 people that are viewing right now, and we do not have enough likes. You are getting very, very good information from Dimitri. He is giving us our time to break up this case, and we need to hit them like buttons. Okay, hit the like button, also hit the share button, and make sure you also follow his page. Now, once this live concludes, I'll make sure to add it into the description box. But for right now, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to hit the share button. We don't have enough likes, so I need them likes to go up, 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 up. Okay. All right, Jimmy. Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Wait. Before you answer, Jimmy, let me get this question. How will the drug use come into play in regards to credibility?
It can come into play in a variety of different ways, right? So let's start at the beginning, right? Drug use technically can be used to lower somebody's inhibitions, right? So to the extent that consent is a question, it may come in that way. Depending on what the evidence shows, it may also come in to hurt the credibility of either party, right? Whatever the evidence, wherever the evidence will lead us, right? If there are medical records, for example, then any good lawyer, and he will have good lawyers, will request those medical records, request information about her medical history, see whether or not this drug use perhaps predated the conduct. There's so many different ways it can go here. The drug use will certainly matter in so many facets, whether or not it existed or not. If it didn't, and that contradicts her allegations, that's a big deal. We'll see what the evidence shows. The drug use in particular is useful as it relates to medical records. So we'll see what the meds show.
All right, Jimmy.
Yeah, I got a question. I saw that Diddy sent someone to rob Kanye's house. I'm not seeing that anywhere else. Is that a real accusation or is that made up?
He just asked that and clicked off. All of it is alleged until we see proof. Kanye has not confirmed. The only person that confirmed was Kid Cudi. Nahesa?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
I am loving this stream. I'm learning so much about how the process will go, but I have one question. I've been seeing many clips of old clips that are resurfacing of colleagues of his that are, telling stories about Cassie. Like Young Jock mentioned her shaving her head and how he approached her with that. And will that be used in court, do you think? And will that open a can of worms into his past relationships?
Really, really good question. So look, when cases go to trial, right, there are what are called rules of evidence in place. There are certain pieces of information that a jury can hear, and certain pieces of information that juries can't hear for a variety of reasons, right? Because it may at some point impact the case in a negative way. And one of those rules of evidence is the rule of relevance, right? And the extensions of that rule. And the rules of relevance basically say that if something is not relevant to a case, it can't come in, because then a jury will look at that irrelevant information and render its verdict based on that. And we don't like that, right? And when it comes to prior acts, right, things that people have done in the past that may speak to whether or not they're responsible in the instant case, that depends on the connection between what they've done in the past and what they're on trial for now. How similar are those things? Because if they're similar, then credibility may be impacted and reliability may be impacted, and you can bring that in, right? You can't come into a case, generally speaking, bring in 50 witnesses to say that this party's a bad person and this is how I know, right? You can't do that. You have to connect why they're a bad person to what's being alleged in the case. And if you can do that, a judge may let some of that evidence in.
Thank you Hello? Yes, thank you so much. I have one follow-up question and I'll go.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Cassie stated that there were witnesses, people in the camp. Are they also part of the lawsuit? Like, let's say I'm not talking about the housekeeper, the chef. I'm talking about the managers, the publicists, the core people around him. Are they going to be reprimanded also?
I'm unfamiliar with who is exactly named as a defendant in the lawsuit, right? The only people that can be held responsible for anything is who is a defendant in the lawsuit, right? Everybody else is just a witness.
Okay. Well, that's all. Thank you so much. I'll step down. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Dimitri.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And have
sorry. Thank you, Nahesa. Is it Maki? I think you came on before and I messed up your name.
Yeah, it's Machi.
Oh, Machi, go ahead.
Yeah. Me personally, I think like all of this is coming about. I'm not saying that her accusations are false or they're true, but I feel now that she see that he's getting serious with someone else publicly. All of these accusations are coming about now, and like you said, like it's hard to prove the rape and the sexual abuse because of consent. Because when you're in a relationship, you've consented already. So when did you say no? And then he keep going. So I didn't see any details in the case, but I just feel like
For the attorney,
publicly.
you have a question for the attorney?
Oh yeah. What are the real details of the case? Like any factual things that we really know, or is it just accusations?
Yeah, I mean, the word fact is a funny thing. Right now, there are allegations, right? Those allegations will have to be proven in order for somebody to be held responsible in this case. And the way those allegations are proven is through a very, very detailed vetting process by which evidence comes out, testimony comes out, other things come out. So it's tough. The burden, as everybody knows, is always on the plaintiff to prove that the defendant did something wrong. So legally speaking, we come to this from a defendant did nothing wrong perspective. And it's upon the plaintiff to change that for us. And maybe the plaintiff will, right? We'll have to see.
And also, do we know how long after the relationship did it stop for her to make these accusations, or is this in real time? Like he just did this and she's filing a suit now.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, she's been out of the relationship for enough time to be married and have 2 kids. So time has passed. So
basically, not to throw it out there, but now you filing the suit after you've been in another relationship, and this man has another relationship, and now you want to come and say would come with these allegations. Is that basically? That's how it looks to me. I could be wrong.
No, it's not that you're wrong. You're putting out there things that may be defenses, right? And we'll see if they're good defenses. It'll take time to figure that out. The defense, the defense in the sense that the plaintiff is jealous because of something is a tried and true defense in sexual assault cases. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see if it works here. We'll see if it's made, and if it's made, we'll see if it works. It's important not to jump to conclusions, right? Because we don't know what'll come out, and that's really, really important.
All right, Machi, we're gonna go to the next one. Thank you for coming.
Right.
Ebony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, so my question is, with the civil suit, if her and her team decides to accept the settlement from his team, and when they draw up the papers, can they put in the settlement anything they want to put in as far as if there is a criminal case after this, can they put in there if she accepts the settlement, she cannot participate in the criminal case?
Yeah, so great question, one that I answered at the beginning. You can't contract around participation in a criminal case. You can never settle a case and pay somebody money if they promise not to participate in a criminal case. That's not allowed. Otherwise, right, you would have really rich people that just contract and then don't let people testify in criminal cases. It wouldn't be allowed. There's a huge public policy consideration there. We don't like stopping people from engaging the criminal justice system.
Okay, thank you. That was just my question.
Sure.
All right. Tawana sends in a super chat and says, in a typical man's mind, they swear to God somebody is angry, they moved on, arrogant, shaking my head. And that was to Machi. Thank you for that. All right. What is this? She Darion?
Yes, I have a question. Because of the alleged trafficking that they stated in the case, would that be considered something as a RICO charge because she said she felt she was trafficked?
RICO is a federal statute that essentially punishes for participation in organized crime, right? It's a conspiracy statute. So is it possible? Yes, I suppose it's possible. But you would have to allege that there's essentially a criminal organization that traffics, which I don't think that's been the allegation yet. Again, I'm not involved with the case, but I don't think that's been an allegation yet. RICO is one of those statutes that's misunderstood very often. It's designed for specific purposes.
The reason why I said that was because she said that he had people that worked for him, allegedly, that also aid and abet in her abuse, in her alleged abuse. And so basically, she was saying that there were other people that were aware of the things that were going on from state to state. And so even when she allegedly left, there were people he would contact to, I guess, bait her back in to come back to him. But so would that be added as I guess, as a part of a RICO criminal case if there was something that will come on later on down the line?
So again, if somebody helps him do something, right, that may be conspiracy, right? Agreeing with somebody else to do something wrong, right? RICO is a statute that's designed to punish a criminal organization and designed to punish the people that further the objectives of that criminal organization. So it's a bit different. I can see where you're drawing the connection. There is some overlap. I get it. But it's a little different. RICO is designed to publish a criminal enterprise, right? And again, look, these lawsuits can be amended and we will see.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That's all the people who came up so far. Is there anything that you wanted to add outside of questions?
No, I think that these questions have been really, really good. I mean, terrific questions. And it's important to recognize that there's a distinction between civil and criminal, right? The two things that you should pull away out of this is, number one, there's a difference between civil and criminal. And number two is that we're early, right? We're early. And as this case moves on, there will be evidence that's turned over. Some of that evidence will be public, some of it won't be. And that's where the real meat of the case will be, right? Where the real information that led to this lawsuit coming out will be. And then there will be extensive motion practice as to what information can come in at a trial. So we are at the very beginning. And as this case moves on, things will become clearer. They're unclear now, and that makes sense.
All right. Someone says, how do NDAs play a role for witnesses?
They don't. NDAs are contracts. If you're not a party to the contract, generally speaking, then you're not bound by it. So generally, they don't.
All right. And I think that's a good point that we could kind of like leave off there. Nobody else clicked on. Is there anybody else who wanted to click on real quick before we end? Because I think he kind of answered majority of like any of the real questions. We still have to wait for more evidence to come out. We don't have the evidence from her side, and we don't really have the defense from his side other than, oh, I didn't do it. Let's see. We got a super chat. It says, if she wins the lawsuit, how long will she have to pursue criminal charges? And if she wins the criminal, would that be enough to open up Kim Porter's case?
So again, the criminal case and the civil case are at least technically, procedurally not related. So the criminal case can start at any time. It doesn't have to start when the civil case ends. And it doesn't necessarily have to impact when other cases start, right? She wouldn't be the one winning the criminal case. It would be the state winning the criminal case, right? So the mechanisms here are different. The compulsion that people have to merge civil and criminal is what causes a lot of these problems, because they're really, really different. And we're in civil world now, and we'll be in criminal. If we're in criminal, we're not there yet. We'll see what happens if we go there.
All right, we have Mo.
Hi, Nick, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just have a really quick question. I don't know if it was addressed or asked. In regards to what we were just talking about, the RICO, there's allegations of Diddy having something to do with his baby mother, Kim Porter. Would the evidence in this case, if she wins or not, give the feds enough to, charge him with a RICO based off of that and Kim Porter's death?
So again, RICO is a enterprise corruption statute, right? In New York State, they call it enterprise corruption. In the feds, they call it RICO. It's a criminal organization statute. They would have to somehow make out a case that there is some criminal enterprise that is furthering these kinds of illegal acts. It's not impossible. It just hasn't happened yet.
Okay, so it's possible. It's just all about what happens next.
Yeah, anything is possible. We have to keep in mind that he's, this isn't a criminal case, so you can't really say innocent until proven guilty. But he's still somebody who hasn't been, a verdict hasn't been rendered adjudicating him guilty of anything, right? So we have to keep that in mind. He's at this point not somebody who's done anything wrong.
All right.
I think we could end at that note. Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Demetrius. Again, he has his own YouTube channel where he talks about these cases, breaks down cases, and gives his insight from a lawyer standpoint. So it's always good to see like what we think as, the people on the outside that ain't really got a legal background, and then the people who have a legal background that can say, well, this, and this is how the procedures go. So definitely make sure you go to his YouTube channel. You can shout it out again on the screen. Tell people how they can find you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, guys, my YouTube channel is youtube.com /@DShackLaw. That's DSHAK Law, LAW. And I post a lot of interesting stuff, or at least I think it's interesting. So if you want to check it out, that'd be great.
What was your take on this lawsuit? I haven't seen your video yet. What was your take on it?
It's when you're kind of in my position, I don't really like to speculate, because I lose credibility, because I like to only talk about things that are true and that I can actually get my hands on. And so the only thing that's available now are the allegations and kind of what possibilities extend out of those allegations in terms of evidence, in terms of information that can come out, in terms of the possibilities, the results, right? So that's what's important for me to do. I haven't done a long video on it because there's just not enough there yet. But maybe there will be. This is a case that's going to last months and months and months, if not longer.
Do you go to the trials of these types of cases? And if this goes to trial, will this be something that you actually like go to in person to cover?
No, look, I'm not a media guy, right? I'm a lawyer. I represent my clients all day. And most of my time, if not all of my time, goes to that. I wish I could have the time to go and observe trials. I would do that all day. I love that stuff. I can't do it. I won't be doing it here unless something changes.
Oh, okay. Because, that's the new thing with the lawyers who are, having the YouTube channels. They're going to these trials also and covering them and things like that.
Also, let's keep in mind, this is in federal court, not in state court. So the rules are pretty strict. You can't just kind of walk in and tape stuff. And, state court is a little bit more relaxed. Federal court's real strict. So you got to be careful about what the media does, right? Federal court trials aren't taped, for example, right? So it's very, very limited in what media people can do in there.
All right. So we loving Dimitri's commentary. They are saying, I like this guy. If you like him, you like his commentary, make sure to go follow him. We appreciate. Somebody said, hear the shade. He has clients. They said, oh, wait, where is it? They said, hear the shade. He has clients. I heard that, booked and busy. All right. Thank you again, Dimitri. We're going to end the stream there. If you guys have not liked the video yet, make sure you hit that like button.